In today's briefing, we will be covering the conflict of the Western Sahara, and we'll be talking about the history so that we can greater understand what is currently going on in the region. Before the area of colonization in Western Sahara, it was inhabited by indigenous people called the Sahrawi people, who happened to be of Berber and Arab descent. As European nations sought to invade, colonize, and imperialize Black and brown nations, Spain and France fought over the region to establish control in parts of northern Africa. In 1884, the Berlin Conference was a meeting where European countries decided to divide up the nations to claim parts and territories within Africa.
And then in 1887, Spain colonized Western Sahara. This European occupation was not without resistance, and many Sahrawi people fought for independence.
So then the Green March and Moroccan occupation was in 1957 when Morocco becomes independent and claims Western Sahara as their own. So in 1965, the UN calls for a decolonization of Western Sahara. And then in 1975, the Green March was the resettling of 350,000 Moroccans in the territory. And Spain announces that they plan to retreat from North Africa.
And then you have the Polisario Front and the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic. In 1973, Polisario Front opposed Spanish and Moroccan rule, and that they wanted the establishment of an independent state called the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic. This started a 16-year-long guerrilla war against Moroccan forces, and then the front ended up controlling about 20% of the territory now, and the rest is controlled by Morocco.
In 1979, Mauritania withdrew from the conflict. Morocco is now the only occupier of Western Sahara.
And then in 1991, the United Nations released a ceasefire, established the United Nations mission for the referendum of the Western Sahara to oversee a promised referendum on self-determination, giving Western Sahara the choice on what they want to be independent or integrated with neighboring countries. Ceasefire was not able to come into fruition.
So when looking at international involvement, the Western Sahara remains divided, and Morocco still controls some portions while Polisario Front controls others. The international community and the United Nations are continuously working in diplomatic efforts to find a peaceful resolution in this territory. However, this is an ongoing process. And in November of 2020, when the U.S. recognized the Moroccan government as the rulers of the territory, this really angered Algeria and it brought an end to the ceasefire. And so in exchange for the U.S. recognition of Morocco's claim of Western Sahara, Morocco agreed to normalize relationships with Israel. So that's kind of why the Trump administration had agreed to recognize for their own gains. So when looking at this conflict, the main actors involved are Algeria and Morocco. They both want to claim the territory as their own, and this is really difficult to resolve this conflict because no one wants to stop fighting for it. They both want to control. And another actor that is really important in this situation is the Polisario Front, which is a group of indigenous inhabitants in Western Sahara, and they're actually backed by Algeria. So right now, we just want to look at what we can do to resolve this conflict.
A potential resolution for the conflict could be the UN facilitates more discussions. The entire time, the two countries have been meeting with each other, not bothering to involve non-biased actors. The United Nations could produce a resolution that satisfies both of the countries' wants and needs. It could represent the Sahrawi people and let them become independent and decide what they want to do with the land. It is also possible that the UN just splits the land based on the natural resources. If a resolution doesn't become of the situation, an outcome could just be another conflict between the two countries. They hold a lot of mistrust towards one another. There has been a recent development between the two. There was a recent earthquake in Morocco. Algeria offered aid to Morocco, and even though both countries still hold high levels of mistrust towards one another, it could be possible with the offering of aid that it could lower the tensions between both of the countries and they could come up with a resolution by themselves.
The overall conflict regarding the Moroccan rule versus the Algerian rule over the West Saharan land revolves around power. The United States serves as a neutral position between the two countries in the Western Sahara, demonstrating the different nature of its alliances with both sides. Decision makers in the United States should not be as concerned about the Western Sahara conflict as they should be with our international conflicts. However, there is a slight concern politically that diplomatic efforts to resolve the dispute might fail and destabilize the region with renewed violence. The U.S. has had a strong history with Morocco ever since President Carter approved the resumption of arms sales to Morocco. U.S. policy chose to support Morocco militarily but not politically, in order to maintain positive neutrality. On the other side, the U.S. sees Algeria as a potential investment in the scene of a future economic contest with China. Keeping Morocco as a geostrategic ally without jeopardizing its economic interests in Algeria is the United States' main objective.
Let's look at this conflict through a realist lens by looking into the state's interests that are involved in the Western Sahara conflict.
This conflict is creating a security dilemma in between all the conflicting states.
Who is it creating a conflict between?
Both Morocco and Algeria have a long-standing geopolitical rivalry and competition for influence of the region.
What are some reasons that people are fighting over the territory?
Both countries have economic interests in the natural resources of the Western Sahara. The control over phosphates, fisheries, and potential oil resources is a shared incentive. Control over these resources is a significant economic gain for both countries.
Okay. The Western Sahara's placement is beneficial to the security of Morocco and neighboring countries as it is on the coast of the Atlantic Ocean.
Yes, and is it Algeria wary of the Moroccan territorial expansion and dominance in the region? The Western Sahara conflict is seen by Algeria as a way to prevent the Moroccan influence from extending further.
This really is a great example of how this conflict can be interpreted through a realist lens. It is mainly focused on power by material capabilities.
How can we see this conflict through a liberalism perspective?
With neoliberalism, stressing the importance of international institutions and reducing the inherent conflict that realists assume in an international system in order to reach long-term mutual gains compared to the realists who are more focused on short-term gains. We can see the importance of international institutions in the Western Sahara conflict through the personal envoy process, where the United Nations is facilitating negotiations between parties involved in the Western Sahara.
With the UN's commitment to assist these parties to achieve lasting and mutually acceptable solutions based on compromise, it will provide for the self-determination of the people of Western Sahara.